on the computer. Hey everybody, this is Lyra Schneider from Phoenix Pagan Pride Day. We're here with Robert Ladensack, and he's going to tell us a little bit about wild backyard gardening. Robert, thanks for being here.
Hey folks, I'm here in my forest garden. Might seem an unusual thing to be having here in the arid zona, but it is entirely possible. Basically, a lot of gardening is done in a way where things are destroyed, completely made flat, and then people grow just the things that they're interested in massive quantities. They use a lot of resources to do so. They have to end up using a lot of chemicals oftentimes or other pesticides. Um, Basically, forest gardening and wild gardening is the method by which you take the natural tendency of plants and other organisms to form guilds that help each other as they compete with one another. So you basically end up with a natural system that ends up far more resilient to harmful outer influences, like changes to the climate, for instance. Um, but you end up with a upper story and a mid story and a lower story, and plants growing underneath the ground. The rooting ones, and other organisms living underground, animals, fungi, as well as, if you look here in my garden, um, you also take advantage of all kinds of open niches and spaces. Um, we have vines growing up through trees, um, producing the most unusual of fruits. Let's get around here and take a look at some of these things. Like, see, normally a very exotic plant, the jelly melon, is able to grow all the way up into the canopy, just because it's being treated like a natural organism instead of being grown on a trellis or something. It can look very wild, it can look very uncontrolled, but it is using all of the powers of these plants, all of their natural ability to get along with their neighbors, compete with their neighbors, but work on a ever-shifting balance. So I can grow native plants, and the native plants can allow far more unusual and alien plants a place to live as well. Animals take a major part in a forest garden. It draws its own insects, its own birds, all kinds of different creatures come into them and will eat the excess fruits and spread the seeds to all those locations in a yard where they're naturally inclined to grow. So you have so much less use of pesticides, for there aren't enormous monocultures of a single kind of plant. So the pests, as they're called, don't get the opportunity to grow exponentially. They grow constantly at a small amount, enough for natural. We've got the oak from California in here. What is assumed to be merely an offensive organ, the thorn on the gray thorn, shows itself to actually be a method of climbing into the canopies of other trees. See, one of the things that's really important in wild gardening and forest gardening is the natural process of succession. Succession is where you end up having a different kind of or a set of organisms that do better at different phases of a forest life. With the intellect of humans and human similar creatures, we can speed this succession up. Instead of taking a couple hundred years, we can do this in a mere decade or two, um, with a lot of the fruits to be um, gleaned from it in just 4 or 5 years. So this is a really amazing method, and really it's about watching nature, seeing how it does what it does, and emphasizing those tools, those methods, those strengths, instead of fighting them, instead of crushing everything flat and just making a super orderly garden. There's so much room, so much space here, so much surface area, so many systems coming together, and that's where most interactions of life occur, where things come together, different systems. So I hope that gives you guys a little bit of a primer. You can always ask me through direct message or online if you'd like to connect with any resources. There's a small edible forest garden over at the Glendale Public Library, 59th Avenue on Brown, just south of Peoria, that all includes just desert plants. Um, and just look for online for forest gardening, wild gardening, natural gardening. In the state, you can get native or adapted plants at Native Seed Search, and Desert Survivors. Hopefully that's will give you an idea of some of the things that are possible. Does that work for you?
Robert, that was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, sorry, just shooting from the hip here. Hopefully I can yammer on enough and not too much and not too little.
No, I think it was just right. And if anybody needs to contact Robert for any further information, I'll have his contact info posted with this video.